Oh hey, happy Friday. I am back with another readathon video sponsored by bookstore.com, and this time I'm reading the entire Anne of Green Gables series. So bookstore.com is this amazing website where they sell so many different box sets and series for literally incredible prices. So I will put their link in the description box so you can go and check it out, have a browse. They've got so many cool series on there. Last month I read their entire Percy Jackson box set, which was a lot of fun. I read it all in 24 hours, so I will link to that so you can go and watch. This weekend I'm reading the entire Anne of Green Gables series, and this one is a lot longer. This is 8 whole books, so we will not be doing it in 24 hours, but I will be doing it this entire weekend. I have only ever read the first Anne of Green Gables book, and when I was younger I used to watch the movie on repeat. I absolutely loved it. But these are such fun additions because as a kid, however much I loved this first book, I never went on with the series because the editions that we had in my parents' house just looked so grown up. After book 1 they looked way too grown up for me, and so I didn't feel like I'd be able to read them, I guess, as a kid. Whereas these editions are really fun. They look so much more accessible, and of course Anne does get older through the series, but look how fun they look. I don't really know what to expect with this series. I know the story of number 1 pretty well, but I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the series, other than the fact I think I just gave myself a small spoiler by showing Anne in a wedding dress on the front cover of one of these books later on, but I kind of saw that coming. Like, we all saw the Anne and Gilbert thing coming, right? So it's currently Friday afternoon. I am heading into the hottest weekend of the year, and my plan is to do nothing but read books the whole time and do appropriately Anne of Green Gables-esque activities like go for a picnic. I was planning to make some currant wine because if you're not familiar with the story of Anne of Green Gables, there is a pretty infamous scene in it where she invites a new friend over for tea and tries to serve her what she thinks is blackberry cordial or something, and turns out actually to be wine, and it's super inappropriate and everyone is scandalized and Anne is mortified. So I thought I would make my own currant wine, looked up a recipe, and it turns out it takes 6 months to a year to prepare. So I will not be doing that, but I will go and see if I can buy some currant wine or just something that looks appropriately like blackcurrant cordial but is actually tasty and alcoholic. I was also considering actually dyeing my hair red for this because I really want to have ginger hair again. I had ginger hair for a few years when I was at uni and I absolutely loved it. I feel like that was my best look, but I'm not sure I'd be able to do it myself. With my hair so dark at the moment, I think it would come out like a dark purpley red, and I want to go full ginger, and I'm not paying someone to do it. So if you could, just for the remainder of this video, picture me with bright red hair and freckles, and then we're all set. So I washed my hair last night and then tied it up and went straight to bed. Are you ready to see what it looks like? At least I can relate to Anne Shirley herself, who was never happy with her hair. This is what mine looks like today. So on that note, let's do this. Let's kick off with book number 1, Anne of Green Gables. Now you see why I can't be perfectly happy. Nobody could who has red hair. And I want red hair. I love that so far we've had chapter 1, Mrs. Rachel Lynde is surprised. Chapter 2, Matthew Cuthbert is surprised. And now I've got chapter 3, Marilla Cuthbert is surprised. How much more people are going to be surprised? Each of us both done in the crown. A crown, a crown, a crown. A king and a queen royally bound. Marilla is just my favourite person. I remembered her from the movie as just being like very strict and scary for most of the beginning, and like she warms up at the end, but actually in the book you get to hear her perspective and she is ace. She's quite McGonagall-esque in that she's like always happy to tell Anne off, but then secretly being like, yes Anne, love that for you. As for Gilbert Blythe, she would not even look at him. She would never look at him again. She's gonna marry him. Archie, do you want to hear what my book's about?
Yeah, I really do.
I don't think you do. I'm not gonna tell you now. You're not in this anymore.
Tell me.
Okay, right, so this is Anne. She looks like this. Red hair, braids.
Yeah.
She's a little
long stockings.
Here's what we've got so far. Here's a recap. It's for your benefit and also for the viewers. So she's a little orphan. She's had a really sad life, and she gets taken in by this brother and sister who wanted a boy orphan to help her on the farm, but they get her by mistake and they're like, ew, we don't want you. Okay. But then they warm to her because she just like talks all the time. She like literally doesn't shut up, and it's great. And she hates her red hair, and she has a big temper. And so far, great moments we've had so far is when a woman came round to visit and was like, oh, she's such a scrawny, skinny, ugly, red-headed little thing. And Anna is and is like, you're a fat bitch, basically. And gets like sent to her room as punishment. But then the woman who takes her in is like, that's awful, but also is like, lol.
Well done.
And then she goes to school, and one of the boys tries to tease her, so she hits him over the head with her slate, and it smacks over, it like cracks over his head, and that was great. And I know that he's the boy she's going to marry one day. He's called Gilbert, just like you. And also, we've just had a moment where she's always wanted a bosom friend, meaning like a bestie mate. And she meets a girl called Diana, and they just like love each other and make up stories all the time. And she invites Diana around for tea and serves her what she thinks is raspberry cordial, but it's actually currant wine. And they're both 11 years old, and Diana drinks like 3 glasses of this and gets really drunk. And now where I'm at to now, which is halfway through, Diana's mom won't let them play together anymore. So now Anne's really sad.
Also, slate. Does that mean they walked around with something to write chalk on?
Yeah, a
Wow.
little slate, a writing slate. Yeah.
That's cute.
Well, thanks for listening to my recap. I hope you all enjoyed it. Also, so Anne has a crazy imagination. She reminds me of me when I was younger, and I love how she tells stories. So she was like, I got in trouble the other day because Marilla, who's the woman who takes her in, she's like, Marilla told me to go and put the sauce. What's the story? She says, Marilla told me to go and put a cover on the sauce in the larder, and I meant to do it, I promise. I was on my way to do it, but I was imagining that I was a nun, and I got distracted and forgot to put the cover on. And then the next morning I woke up and remembered, and I rushed out and found a mouse had drowned in it. So I went out to tell Marilla about this. I promise I was planning that, but on the way I was imagining that I was a fairy going through the woods, and I forgot to tell her, and then she ends up like serving the sauce at dinner. It's okay, nobody eats it. Okay, we're back on the tennis courts. For anyone who followed all of my Reading Rush vlogs, you will see how determined I am to still lose. I'm not ready to win yet, but I've been losing 6-2 every single time, and I'm determined to lose 6-3. It hasn't happened. Since I stopped filming, I just got worse. I lost 6-love, I lost 6-1.
And it's a really windy day.
And it's a really windy day, which doesn't help, but won't help you either.
Well, won't hurt me as much.
Rude. This is the day. I'm going to lose, but only 6-3. Okay, someone just beat me 6-love. We're playing again! It's currently 3-love. I'm turning the camera off so that you don't accidentally witness a crime.
She's a bit delicate right now.
I didn't win a single game.
Hippo, what do you think of that? She's wagging her tail.
It's cool. I haven't even showered and changed out of my tennis stuff because I remember what's going to happen at the end of this book, and I'm so scared to get to it. I just need to get it over and done with. And I finished book 1 down, 7 to go. That was so cute. I loved it so much that I remembered that felt really nostalgic, and loads I didn't remember as well. I did particularly love Anne at the beginning, like as a young child, because she's just so weird and she does grow up quite a lot. I feel like I'm gonna feel a bit the same way that I did when I read Little Women at the end of last year, or the beginning of this year, whenever I read it, which is that I loved the early stuff so much and then found reading part 2 a little sadder because while it was still really good, they're just grown up a bit and I loved them so much as like playful children. It definitely makes me feel sad about what life was like for girls back, this is like 100 years ago I think it's set, and she, you know, she does go and get an education and she wants to be a teacher, but their lives are just so much more limited, and the way that they're told to behave, it's like she has to grow up from childhood so much more quickly because there's like ways in which you have to be proper as a young woman, and that's sad. And then also just in general, even today, like I was talking to Arjun on the way back, it just made me feel really wistful reading it about that stage in your life where you're like 13, 14 and you kind of feel like you should have outgrown the things that you liked as a child before you've actually outgrown them, so you like force yourself to stop playing with your toys and letting your imagination go wild because you're like, I'm a grown up now, and then you actually like looking back it's like, oh, I wish I'd spent just a couple more years being a kid. Anyway, just feeling wistful and nostalgic, I guess. Time for me to get changed and make some lunch because I am starving. I kept reading that for a little bit longer than I was planning to.
Is this karma, or are you getting what you want again? I guess I'm finding it hard to believe in something I couldn't see coming.
This is, well, that's a man, but this is ancho chili mushrooms with frijoles. Oh my god, I wish I had been filming my reaction to what I just read. I literally just, like, my jaw dropped. Oh my god, such a funny thing just happened. I can never decide with these videos, like, how much to give you spoilers or not. This is not a spoiler at all, it's just a funny little episode, so I'm just gonna tell you. So Anne is now like 16. This guy's moved in next door who is so grumpy, and Anne has a cow that keeps escaping and going into his farm, and he keeps getting like absolutely furious about it. And the last time he came over, she was like, I swear on my honor the cow will never be in your farm again. She like ties it up. And then a few days later she's driving back with Diana and she looks over and sees the cow in the farm, and it's like pouring with rain, and she like jumps out of the carriage and rushes over, chases the cow out of the field. It takes forever and she like messes up the whole field in the process. And just at that moment, a guy she knows who she knew had wanted to buy the cow is walking past, and she's like, buy the cow right now, I don't want this cow anymore. So she sells it, sets off, comes home, and then she's like, I better see how the cow even escaped because I had tied him up. And she goes out to the garden and sees her cow perfectly safe, still tied up, and she realizes she sold the farmer next door's cow.
You show me off, it's alright, you can't afford to live.
Ew, gross Anne. I will say I'm enjoying this book like 100% less than the one before because Anne is a grown-up now and she's just like not as lovable as 11-year-old Anne. And instead of her being a kid, we now have these new characters, these twins that Marilla and Anne have taken in, and they're insufferable, or at least one of them is. They're like 7-year-olds, and I'm not interested in children of that age. Gross, they're just annoying. We're not getting enough Gilbert. What else can I complain about? It just doesn't have the same charm and humour for me that the first one did. My favourite part was still that first chapter when she accidentally sold her neighbour's cow. That was brilliant. Okay, I take it back. Some major twist just happened and I'm hooked again. That didn't take long. Okay, I finished book 2. I liked it a lot more at the end, and we did get a really fun, cute little Anne and Gilbert hint right on the very last page. So before I get cracking with book number 3, which I think is going to be about Anne and Gilbert off at university together. So in this one, Anne became the school teacher, which is hilarious because she's 16 years old, and she was literally like the teacher of the town school. But now her and Gilbert are going off to university together. But before I get started with that one, I am going to go on a little mission. I had said I was going to try and track down some of that currant wine today. I've got no idea. I don't really know what currant wine is, to be honest, or where I could find it. But the main thing that Anne was excited about with it was that it was bright red. When she thought it was raspberry cordial, she liked it to be bright red. So I just need to find a bright red drink. Cheers! Cheers. The brightest red raspberry cordial I could find. Try not to get too drunk. It's not raspberry cordial, it's rosé. Oh, it's very sweet. Look at her, grown-up university lady.
Oh, where'd the freckles go?
She's only got a few of them now.
Yeah,
she's very proud of the fact she's grown out of them. It's funny, all these things that are now like so desirable. She's always complaining because she's like, oh, I've got red hair and freckles and I'm so skinny. And it's like, oh, poor you. Okay, I can already tell I'm going to like this one so much more because the new characters in this one, instead of being a bunch of children as they were when Anne was the teacher at the junior school, they're now a bunch of university students, and we've met our first main new character called Philippa, who is hilarious. So already this is going to be my new favourite. Oh my god, this chapter heading. This is big news. Is that coming now? I'm not ready. Okay, that was short-lived. This was not the proposal I thought it was going to be.
You say
this book is delightful. I was worried that after the first one I just wasn't going to be interested anymore as Anne got older, but this book is so emotional.
you show me off, it's alright.
It's gonna come do what's gonna happen.
Why aren't you afraid to say goodbye? I know you're just the type to be okay without me. You show me off, sat in your car for hours just to be unhappy.
I finished book 3 and I love it so much. I was right that Phil was going to be the best character ever. We got a second love interest, which was very dramatic, and we got the big romantic moment at the end. Do I like this one even more than the first one? I might. It's 9:15, so I'm going to try and fit one more book in before I go to bed, because then I will be halfway through the series and I can just do the same thing again tomorrow. Feeling a little sleepy, so we'll see how that goes. This one, and of Windy Poplars. I'm making a judgment based on the front cover that I'm not going to enjoy this one as much, because I think she's going to become a school teacher again. Yeah, she's going to become a principal. And I didn't enjoy book 2 where she was a school teacher because I'm not really interested in children. I mean, I know I really liked book number 1 where Anne herself was a kid, but that's just because she was so weird and great. Whereas when book number 2 was just like a whole cast of children characters, I wasn't really interested. So I hope that this one isn't going to just be a repeat of that, because I loved book 3 with all of her uni friends. That was so much fun. Like, she and 3 other girlfriends all rented a house together, and it was just, I loved that. I loved them all being roomies. It was so much about like female friendship and stuff, and I loved it. So I'm not sure how I'm going to enjoy this. But there's no point going in with a negative attitude, so let's give it a go. I would pour myself some more of that raspberry cordial, but it was disgusting, so I won't. Weird little piece of trivia I just learned about this. So this is book number 4 in the series chronologically, but it was actually the 7th book written. So this one was published in 1936. I can't decide whether that means I should change the order that I read them in, but when I say I can't decide, I have decided. I'm not going to change the order. I'm sticking to my guns. This is the order they're laid out in the box set. This is the order the story is told. But I know there's debates with like the Narnia series, for example. Some people like to read those chronologically, whereas I haven't ever read the full series. But the ones I have read, I've read in publication order, like the order that they were written, because the story makes more sense that way. Anyway, little trivia for you. I'm basically 100 pages through. There isn't really a plot to this one. It's just a collection of letters that Anne is writing to Gilbert, a massive cast of characters of people that she meets while she is the principal of this school. It makes sense as something that Ellen Montgomery might write, because she just wants to spend some more time like writing the character of Anne, and so she just slots it into this time of Anne's life that like previously in the series that have been published before hadn't been explored, and that was a good few years for her to slot in this book. What feels a bit jarring though is that the Anne in this book is such a change from the Anne in the last book, and it'll be interesting going on and reading book number 5, which was written so much earlier. Will Anne feel more childish and familiar again, because she feels very, very grown up and mature in this, and I wonder if this is kind of what she's going to turn into as the series goes on, and then that's what Ella Montgomery had got so used to writing her as that more grown-up lady that when she slotted this book in, she brought that version of Anne with her.
Settling in, settling down.
Good morning! It's a new day. Time to read the second half of the series. Let me give you a quick update on my reading. So last night before I fell asleep, I read basically half of this book, number 4, Anne of Windy Poplars. And I am actually going to put this book down for now. The reason being, this is a really cute book, but this is basically just a collection of little stories and anecdotes about Anne's time during the 3 years she spent as a principal in between. Am I allowed to say these spoilers? I'm just going to say them because this is something that I knew before even reading these books. I think it's obvious. In between getting engaged and getting married, which we know is going to be the next one because here she is in a wedding dress. As I said yesterday, Ellen Montgomery went back and wrote this like years later, so it's just like a fun extra little collection of stories and miscellaneous characters Anne meets, and I feel like this is the kind of book that I want to read a bit more slowly. Like, I want to dip in and out, so I'm putting this one down for now. And I also just wanted to give you an update because I did some googling in bed last night, and let me use this box set as a little visual aid. I discovered a bit more about the order everything was written in. Here we have the series. Ellen Montgomery wrote these books in this order: number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, number 7, number 8, then she went back and wrote number 4, and then she wrote number 6. So in terms of how old Anne is, she wrote her 11 to 16, 16 to 18, 18 to 22. Then at the end of this book, she gets engaged, as we know, and is like, we'll wait 3 years until we get married. So the next book that Ella Montgomery wrote was 3 years later. So Anne is now 25, and she writes her 25 to 27. Then there was a massive jump. So the very next book that Ella Montgomery wrote was this one, in which Anne is 41 years old. So she wrote these two where Anne's like 41 going all the way up into her 50s. It was only after that that she jumped back and wrote this one where Anne is 22 to 25. These are the years in which she's engaged, waiting to get married. So that makes sense why yesterday I was saying she felt so much older, is because Ella Montgomery had just been writing her as like a 50-something year old. And then finally she wrote this one, which fills in some of that gap. So you know there was a massive gap between writing her as a 27-year-old to suddenly writing her as a 41-year-old. This final book that she wrote fills in some of that gap. It writes her from like 34 to 40, so we see some of what happened in the meantime. Ella Montgomery did also write a collection of short stories about Anne, which take her all the way up like into her 70s, but those are, they're short stories, so they're not in this box set of novels, and they also weren't actually published at all until like 2009, so those just seem like a separate thing. But if you do love everything to do with Anne of Green Gables, there is another book out there for you to find. So I'm really glad I looked that up, because I feel like that makes much more sense of this series. So I'm now going to crack on with the second half and dive into Anne's House of Dreams. In terms of my plans for the day, other than reading, there is one big Anne of Green Gables themed thing I want to do, which is have a picnic. So all the way back in book number 1, there is a picnic scene, which is so cute and so important to Anne. It's like her first ever picnic, and she is excited about it for weeks in advance. Like, you've never seen anyone so excited about a picnic. She has her first ever ice cream on that picnic, and it was just a really cute scene. So that's something that I'm definitely going to do today. We actually have a picnic hamper. I'm going to pack it up with sandwiches and ice cream, obviously, and take it to the park to do some reading there, and then I'll feel like I've filled my full Anne of Green Gables self. Right, let's go get this bitch married.
Easy to be misunderstood.
Okay, new favourite character. Anne's new neighbour is called Miss Cornelia Bryant, and she hates men. And at one point Anne says, "Why do you hate men so, Miss Bryant?" And she says, "Lord dearie, I don't hate them. They aren't worth it. I just sort of despise them." Love her. So I don't know if it's because it was seen as inappropriate or vulgar to talk about it, but this book has been so coy when it comes to talking about having a baby. It actually took me ages to figure out that that's what they were actually saying. So at one point Anne hints to Gilbert, he's like, "What more could we ever want in life?" And she's like, "Oh, there is just one more thing. Oh, I can't wait till the spring." But a bit later on, she's talking to her new friend, Leslie, who I haven't told you about yet. Leslie's a really interesting character. I'll tell you more about her later. But Anne's talking to Leslie and is hinting at what she hopes for in the spring. It's not even, like, I thought she was talking about flowers, because she's like talking about her hopes for their little house in the spring. So I thought she was talking about like the flowers that would grow. That's literally all we've heard. Then suddenly people are sending her baby clothes. So you're like, oh, okay, is she pregnant? Like, no one has said that. Even when I suspected that maybe what she was talking about in the spring was a baby, I thought she was just talking about like wanting a baby. And now suddenly one morning there was a sudden commotion in the little house of dreams. Telephone messages are sent. Marilla comes, and suddenly Anne's lying in bed with the baby next to her. What? When was she pregnant? Something really sad just happened. Oh my god, such a good twist just happened. I did not see that coming at all. I really thought I knew what was being built up to, and I was a little bit like eye rolling, like a little unrealistic, but this is so much more dramatic and I love that. I said I was going to tell you about Leslie. So Leslie is one of Anne's new neighbours, and she is just this really interesting character who has had such a sad life. Just like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. So she's quite like a cold person, but her Anne, of course, manages to warm her heart, because Anne can make anyone be friends with her, and so they end up having this like much more intense, intimate friendship, I guess, than she's had before. Poor Diana Barry is just like not being mentioned in this. Diana just settled down, got married, is now seen as like very simple little Diana, relegated to the past. I liked her, but Leslie is Anne's new bosom friend, and she is definitely a more interesting character, but it's her storyline that just had such a big twist. I'm hooked.
All the time, the girl who can do everything.
Now Gilbert's an ardent conservative. When we first met him, he was a Grit, which is a word I've just learned, which means liberal, and now they're all like ardent red hot conservatives. I mean, to be fair, I don't even know what that means in the context of this time period in Canada, but I know it probably ain't good. And I finished book number 5. I really liked that book. There were a bunch of new characters who were just so lovable. There was a lot of emotion in this book. It was a lot more emotional than we've had so far. So yeah, I loved it. I'm feeling wary about the next one, because so far So far I've actually alternated whether or not I liked the books. Like, I've loved 1, 3 and 5 and not so much 2 and 4. So is number 6 going to follow that pattern? Also, number 6 is another of the ones that was written much later. This was the last novel that she wrote. So I think it might suffer again from what I said about number 4, of it feeling like she was kind of a bit out of touch with the character at that point. Because I also looked up, not only were number 4 and 6 written at the end, they were also written quite a lot later. Like, there was a 15-year gap in between her finishing the original series and then coming back and writing those ones that slotted in. So I feel like I might not love Anne in this book in the same way that I do in the original ones she wrote. But, you know, it's worth a try. Let's go in with high hopes. You know what time it is? It's picnic time! I feel genuinely as excited for this picnic as Anne did for her picnic. I haven't been on a proper, like, old-fashioned picnic in so long. Look, we even have a proper hamper with little wine glasses and stuff. We're gonna make Pims. Sunshine, never mind, oh, bring me all of your gray skies. Hello, picnic.
Hello. Okay.
How to make Pims. First step, Pims. Should I just tip them all in?
These are some chunka boys. Oh.
Arch hasn't let me have any hand in assembling this Pims because he thinks I'm going to mess it up.
No, I'm very controlling.
Look at that precision. God, he's a control freak. I got given a job. Are you ready? This is it. Mint.
Mint from the garden.
Basically, homemade Pims.
This is for Emma. Because she's so sweet.
Hold it. Aww. Oh, that's delicious, Arch. Cheers!
Cheers.
You might as well just call me Anne Shirley.
Can't see the future, can't see the past. I can only hope that this will last. Oh, sunshine, never mind. Bring me all of your gray skies. Love has new faces, but it's still the same.
Ooh, we have a character from the past reappearing. Okay, finished book number 6, and this was definitely the same kind of thing as book 4 in that it's more of a collection of anecdotes rather than any kind of overarching plot. It doesn't particularly connect to the wider series, which makes sense because it was slotted in afterwards. The character who comes back right at the end is Gilbert's old college girlfriend, so that was kind of the only way that it connected into some bigger plot. But yeah, it was fun. So Anne's kind of a secondary character at this point. A lot of the stories were actually about her children. We get to hear like one little anecdote or a few little anecdotes from each of the children as well as some from her. And from the looks of it, where's the next book? I brought it. The next book is called Rainbow Valley, and I think it's going to be the same because Anne's not even on the front cover, it's just the children. She's got 6 children. So I think we're going to hear a lot about them, and from what it says on the back, also another family nearby. I don't even know if Anne's going to be in this one, to be honest. And we're back! And I think I managed to avoid getting sunburnt, though I'm just appropriately kind of red and freckly like Anne herself. Right, can I finish Rainbow Valley before I get hungry and have to cook dinner? Rainbow Valley, all about kids. I have heard that Rilla is a great character and she's going to be the main character of the final book, so I'm excited to properly meet her. She was in the last book, but like, we didn't get to see much of her personality yet. Well, good that there's a character called Rosemary West because she's a serial killer. Obviously Ella Montgomery didn't know that because the serial killer one hadn't even been born yet when she wrote this, but that's all I can think when I hear that name. This book is very religious. Right, me and my book are heading to the kitchen to make a mushroom bolognese. Archie's here too. I'm not just all alone. I'm just not talking to him because I've got reading to do.
Open your eyes.
Ah! Where did you find it?
It's in Tesco.
Oh my goodness, it was?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you why this is so exciting. There is a shop on our road that has a sign outside advertising these cookie dough ice cream sandwiches, and every morning after tennis I walked past and looked at the sign and been like, I really want one of those. So I've just been building up for weeks to when I'm gonna get one, and then on Friday it was like the hottest day of the year, and I was like, this is the day I'm gonna go and get my ice cream sandwich. And I went there and they don't even sell them. Like, the woman seemed completely baffled, like the fact that I even was asking, and I was like, you have a sign advertising them, and she was just like, no, we don't do those. And I was crushed. But now she found one. Also, this is perfect for Anne of Green Gables Day, because in book 1 Anne has her first ever ice cream and she like loses her shit. She likes it so much.
Hey, it's gonna play out the same.
It's such a nice temperature to be outside right now, so I'm just trying to read outside for as long as I can. It is getting darker and harder to see the page, but I'm sticking it out. I can't see. It's also a lot darker than it looks on the screen. This camera does a really good job of picking up the light, but I can not really read this page. Okay, one more down. So what did I feel about this one? Mixed. It had a massive cast of characters and Anne is barely even one of them. She's like not really in this story at all. Her kids aren't even the main characters in this story. It's mainly about a new family that moved to the town called the Merediths, and Mr. Meredith is the vicar, and he has these 4 kids who are just like completely wild and they're always getting into scrapes. Like, they mean well, but they're always getting into trouble, a bit like Anne in the first book. And I really liked the character of the oldest girl, Faith. She's like the brave one, so I really liked her. But overall there were just so many characters to keep track of, because we have to follow all of those children, plus their friendship with Anne and Gilbert's children, even though they're kind of secondary, plus this other girl they meet called Mary Vance, who I didn't really like as a character, plus various little side storylines going on with the adults. So I liked it, but it was also just like a lot to keep track of. Plus it was very, very religious. This book was so much about religion, which I guess makes sense because their father is the vicar. But like, suddenly all of the characters that we've known in the books before are suddenly so obsessed with religion and being really pious, and like, religion has been mentioned in all of the books so far, like, which makes sense for the time and place and everything, but it was not such a big part as it was in this story, and that was like a little bit wearing. So I now just have the one book left, which is Rilla of Ingleside. I still don't really know Rilla. She was not particularly in this book at all, to be honest. Don't think she really featured in this book at all. So I'm excited to get to know her, and I've seen from like Goodreads reviews and stuff that she's a great character. I guess there's going to be a bit of a time jump because she's going to be 15 or something in it. Yeah, so I'm excited to read that. It is now 9:30 on a Sunday night and I'm about to start a whole book. Well done me. And I do really miss Anne. I miss Anne being a main character because I love Anne and she is ultimately the best character. Come on Rilla, we are all counting on you. Oh, this book's gonna be about the war. Maybe I should be in pajamas for this. Okay, that's more like it. I'm ready. Let's dive into this little war novel, shall we? Oh my goodness, Anne is so grown up now that she's actually called Mrs. Blythe by the narrator. Anne, what happened to you? I'm suddenly thinking that this kind of makes sense of how the tone shifts in this series, and like what's super whimsical and fun and silly in the first couple of books, the series just takes on a slightly more serious tone. And I guess that makes sense because while Ella Montgomery was writing these, war broke out and she lived through that war, and I'm sure suffered the, well, I have to look it up, suffered the loss of some of her family members, I don't know. But I wonder if that's why the series loses some of its silliness, is because actually she was going through this tragic time. I'm gonna Google it right now. Okay, so from my very preliminary Google, she was having a pretty shitty time. So in between writing the first few books and then the later books, she got married to some guy who sounds like a complete nightmare. I'm gonna look into more of that story, but like, he sounds like the worst, so she was definitely a bit missed. She also caught the Great Flu and nearly died of it. She was like a really, really big supporter of the war, and then apparently became really disillusioned with how terrible it was, and then afterwards in her diary like writes a lot about her guilt for having supported the war so much. Those diary entries are around the time that she's writing this book, I think. So it's interesting. So in this book there's like a recurring theme, it was in the last book as well, of the piper that's kind of like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, but it's kind of representing a piper coming and taking all of the young boys and men of the village away, and it's this quite like sinister figure, and I guess that is linked to her own guilt about sending all the boys away. I don't know if that made any sense, what I just said. Oh my god, I fell asleep. I tried to read the book in bed and I fell asleep, and it's now Monday morning and I failed. I'm gonna get dressed and talk you through my shame. Okay, I'm here. I can't believe I failed. I never fail at these. I got like a quarter of the way through this book. The boys are going off to war, it's very sad, and then I just fell asleep because, to be fair, it was sleep time. So I did still technically read 8 books this weekend, it's just that I didn't finish all of them. But let me give you my overall thoughts of the series. So this Anne of Green Gables box set is a delight. It is very interesting as a series because the vibe and the tone of the books shifts so much. It feels like a very different book once you're up here than when you started. Book number 1, Anne of Green Gables, is absolute heaven. Nothing can beat it. It's just a wonderful, charming, whimsical, hilarious, moving book in every way. So just for that book alone, I am really glad I did this challenge. But I also so completely fell in love with other books in the series, particularly number 3, where Anne's at uni, and number 5, her first year of marriage. There are such interesting characters in this series, and it's just so fun being in this world and following the characters that you love through all the different adventures in their life, even if the tone does shift and some of the books feel much more serious. And I particularly loved the charming, quirky fun of the early books. Even when they're more serious, by that point you are so invested in the characters that I loved reading about them some more. I am definitely going to finish Rilla of Ingleside, even if I didn't get it in this weekend. This one feels like it's going to be a very serious, sad book, and also like a coming of age book about a young girl during World War I. Like a very different type of book from Anne of Green Gables, and just like wonderful in its own whole new way. I think that's what's so interesting and strange about this box set, is it's like 8 very different books that are connected only by sharing some of the same characters, but actually are very different types of books. So I didn't love all of them. You saw that I didn't like number 2 as much. Number 4 I enjoyed, but it didn't engage me as much. Number 6 similarly was too much about the children, so I didn't like it as much, but that is absolutely balanced out with the books that I did love, and I definitely feel like I want to reread the whole series actually at a much slower pace. Even the ones that I didn't like as much, there's still books I'm going to want to return to. So I mean, just look, how could you not want to spend as much time as you could with this gorgeous little girl? So this is a box set I am definitely going to cherish, and like I said at the beginning, you can buy it yourself from bookstodore.com. I will link to their website in the description box below. They're just incredible. Like the selection that they have on there for the prices that they have is incredible. So they've got this one, they've got the Percy Jackson, which I did a whole video about, but they've just got more books that I can possibly list here, so go and check them out. So thanks to Bookstore for sponsoring this video. I had a great time with Anne and her pals, and do leave me a comment if you have a look on their website. Which box sets are you going to buy yourself? Which box sets would you like to see me try another reading vlog of when I can get some sleep and get the energy to do this again? And hit that subscribe button below for more videos from me twice every week. See you next time!